I thought I knew what betrayal felt like until my sister-in-law stole the most precious moment of my life and broadcast it to the world before I could. My hands were literally shaking as I stared at my phone screen that Tuesday morning in March. There it was, a Facebook post with a photo of the ultrasound I had shown her just 2 days earlier, along with a caption that made my blood run cold. She had posted my pregnancy announcement, claiming she was so excited to become an aunt that she just couldn't wait to share the news. The post already had 47 likes and dozens of comments from family members and friends congratulating us. I felt like I was going to throw up, and not from morning sickness this time. This was supposed to be my moment. My husband and I had been trying for 3 years to get pregnant. 3 long years of negative tests, doctor visits, hormone treatments, and the crushing disappointment that came month after month. We had finally decided to take a break from trying, to focus on ourselves and our marriage, when this beautiful surprise happened. The pregnancy test had shown those 2 pink lines just a week earlier, and we spent the entire weekend in a bubble of pure joy and disbelief. We made plans for how we wanted to announce it. We had this whole elaborate idea involving our dog wearing a Big Brother bandana, and we were going to wait until we hit the 12-week mark to be safe. We had told exactly 3 people: my mom, his mom, and his sister, who we'll call Sarah. We specifically asked all of them to keep it quiet until we were ready to share. But there I was, scrolling through Facebook comments from people I worked with, distant relatives, and even some of my college friends who had somehow seen the post through mutual connections. Everyone was talking about my baby, my pregnancy, my news, and I hadn't even had the chance to process it myself yet. The worst part was that some of these people were finding out about my pregnancy through Sarah's post before I had the chance to tell them personally. I called my husband immediately, my voice cracking as I tried to explain what had happened. He was at work and couldn't look at his phone right away, but when he finally saw the post, he was just as devastated as I was. We had both been so careful about who we told, and we trusted Sarah completely. She had always been the type of person who seemed supportive and caring, always asking about our journey to have kids and offering encouragement during the tough times. The thing that hurt the most was that she had to have planned this. She didn't just accidentally slip up and mention it to someone. She had taken a photo of my ultrasound picture with her phone when I wasn't looking, and then crafted this whole post about how excited she was. She had stolen my thunder completely, and now my special announcement was ruined forever. I spent the rest of that day crying and trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to comment on her post and call her out publicly, but that would have just made everything worse and created more drama. Another part of me wanted to make my own post explaining what had happened, but that seemed petty and would have taken away from what should have been a joyful announcement. My husband came home early from work that day, and we just sat on our couch together, both of us feeling like something precious had been stolen from us. We talked about confronting Sarah directly, but we also knew that his family could be pretty dramatic, and we didn't want this to turn into some huge family feud that would overshadow our pregnancy. The phone started ringing that evening, my aunt calling to congratulate us, then my cousin, then several friends. Each conversation was awkward because I had to pretend to be excited about sharing the news when really I was heartbroken that they were finding out this way. Some people seemed confused about why Sarah had posted it instead of us, and I had to come up with some explanation that didn't throw her under the bus completely. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the ways I had imagined sharing this news, all the reactions I had pictured from the people I cared about, and how none of that would ever happen now. The moment was gone forever, and I felt like Sarah had robbed me of one of the most important experiences of my life. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since Sarah posted my pregnancy announcement, and things have gotten so much worse than I ever imagined they could. What started as a betrayal of trust has turned into something that's completely changed how I see my husband's family, and made me question everything about the relationships I thought I had. The day after I wrote my original post, I decided I needed to confront Sarah directly. I couldn't just let this slide and pretend everything was okay. My husband and I drove over to her house that Saturday morning, and I was prepared for an awkward conversation where she would apologize and we could try to move forward. But that's not what happened at all. When we sat down in her living room, I explained how hurt I was and how important that moment had been to us. I told her that we had specifically asked everyone to keep the news private until we were ready to share it ourselves. I was calm and reasonable, not yelling or being dramatic, just trying to help her understand why what she did was so hurtful. Her response completely floored me. She looked me straight in the eye and said that she didn't think it was that big of a deal, that family should be excited to share good news, and that I was being overly sensitive about the whole thing. Then she said something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. She told me that she had been trying to help us because she could see how sad and stressed we had been about not getting pregnant, and she thought getting the news out there would help us feel more supported. I was so shocked that I couldn't even respond at first. She was acting like she had done us some kind of favor by violating our privacy and stealing our announcement. When I tried to explain again how much this meant to us, she actually rolled her eyes and said that she didn't understand why I was making such a big deal about a Facebook post. My husband, who had been pretty quiet up to that point, finally spoke up and told his sister that what she did was wrong, and that she needed to apologize. That's when things really went off the rails. Sarah started crying and saying that we were attacking her, that she had only posted it because she was excited, and that she couldn't believe we were being so mean to her about it. Then she said something that made everything click into place for me. She said that she had been trying to get pregnant for 6 months, and that seeing our announcement had made her realize how much she wanted a baby too. She said she posted it because she wanted to feel like she was part of the excitement, like she was involved in something special. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about her being thoughtless or inconsiderate. This was about jealousy and her own issues with wanting to get pregnant. She had taken my moment because she wanted to experience some version of that excitement herself, even if it meant stealing it from me. The conversation ended with her storming out of her own living room and locking herself in her bedroom. My husband tried to talk to her through the door, but she wouldn't come out. We eventually left, and I felt even worse than I had before we went over there. But the real bombshell came 3 days later when my mother-in-law called. She had talked to Sarah about our visit, and apparently Sarah had told her a completely different version of what happened. According to Sarah, we had shown up at her house and screamed at her for being excited about becoming an aunt. She told her mom that I had called her horrible names and that my husband had threatened her. None of that was true, but my mother-in-law believed Sarah's version completely. She called to tell us that she was disappointed in how we had handled the situation, and that she thought we owed Sarah an apology. When my husband tried to explain what had actually happened, his mom cut him off and said that Sarah was too upset to lie about something like that. This is where things get really crazy. My mother-in-law then told us that Sarah had been having a hard time lately because she and her boyfriend had been fighting about when to start trying for kids, and that she was feeling left out of all the family excitement about our pregnancy. She said we should be more understanding and supportive, instead of making Sarah feel worse about her own situation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only was Sarah not going to apologize for what she did, but now I was being expected to apologize to her for being upset about it. The whole family was rallying around her like she was the victim in all of this. My husband was caught in the middle, trying to support me while also dealing with his family's reaction. He kept saying that he knew what really happened and that he was on my side, but I could tell he was struggling with the idea of having to choose between his wife and his family. The worst part was that Sarah's original post was still up on Facebook. Even after everything that had happened, she refused to take it down. When my husband asked her about it, she said that too many people had already seen it and commented on it, and that removing it now would just create more drama. So there I was 2 weeks into what should have been the happiest time of my life, dealing with family drama, lies, and manipulation. Every time I thought about the baby growing inside me, instead of feeling pure joy, I felt this mixture of happiness and sadness and anger that was exhausting. I started to wonder if this was a sign of what my relationship with my husband's family was going to be like going forward. If Sarah could lie about something this blatant and have the whole family believe her, what would happen when there were disagreements about the baby? Would she try to overstep boundaries then too? Would my mother-in-law always take her side? The stress was starting to affect me physically. I wasn't sleeping well, I was having trouble eating, and I was constantly anxious about what would happen next. I knew that stress wasn't good for the baby, but I couldn't seem to shake the feeling that my husband's family was going to be a source of problems throughout my pregnancy and beyond. I decided to take a step back from all of them for a while. I stopped checking Facebook, I didn't return my mother-in-law's calls, and I asked my husband to handle any communication with his family for the time being. I needed to focus on my pregnancy and my own well-being, instead of trying to manage everyone else's emotions and drama. But the damage was already done. What should have been the most exciting news of our lives had turned into this ugly family conflict, and I couldn't help but feel like Sarah had poisoned what should have been a beautiful time for us. Update 2. I'm now at 16 weeks, and I honestly don't know how to begin explaining what's happened since my last update. If I thought the situation with Sarah was bad before, what I discovered 2 weeks ago has completely shattered my understanding of what was really going on. I had been avoiding most of my husband's family since the whole announcement drama, but his mom kept calling and texting, trying to get us to come to family dinners and act like everything was normal. She kept saying that we needed to move past this for the sake of family harmony, and that holding grudges wasn't healthy, especially during pregnancy. Finally, my husband convinced me to go to his cousin's birthday party. He said it would be a good opportunity to show that we weren't trying to create divisions in the family, and that maybe being around everyone in a casual setting would help things feel more normal. The party was at his aunt's house and I was dreading seeing Sarah, but I figured I could handle a few hours of awkward small talk for my husband's sake. When we got there, Sarah was already there with her boyfriend, and she actually came up to me and gave me a hug like nothing had ever happened. She asked how I was feeling, commented on how I was starting to show, and even offered to help me get something to drink. I was confused by how friendly she was being, but I thought maybe she had realized how wrong she had been and was trying to make things right without having to actually apologize. It felt weird, but I was willing to go along with it if it meant we could move forward. But then something strange happened. I was sitting in the living room talking to my husband's grandmother when I overheard Sarah talking to a group of cousins in the kitchen. She was talking about pregnancy symptoms and how hard it was to keep food down in the first trimester. At first, I thought she was asking about my experience, but then I realized she was talking about herself. I listened more carefully, and she was definitely talking about her own pregnancy symptoms. She was describing morning sickness, food aversions, and being tired all the time. But here's the thing. She had told us just a few weeks earlier that she had been trying to get pregnant for 6 months, which would mean she wasn't pregnant yet. I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach, and I quietly moved closer to the kitchen so I could hear better. That's when I heard her tell the group that she was about 10 weeks along, and that she and her boyfriend were planning to announce it at the next family gathering. 10 weeks. That would mean she got pregnant right around the time she posted my announcement on Facebook. I felt like I was going to be sick. I excused myself and went to the bathroom to try to process what I had just heard. If Sarah had just found out she was pregnant, or if she had been trying to get pregnant and was feeling sensitive about it, that would explain some of her behavior. But it wouldn't excuse the lies she had told about our confrontation, or the way she had refused to take down the post. When I came back out, I tried to act normal for the rest of the party, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I had overheard. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something felt really off about the whole situation. On the drive home, I told my husband what I had heard. He was as confused as I was, but he said maybe Sarah had just found out and hadn't told the family yet. That would explain why she was talking about it so casually with the cousins but hadn't made any kind of official announcement. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than that. So I did something that I'm not proud of. I started paying closer attention to Sarah's social media activity. Not stalking exactly, but just checking her posts and seeing what she was sharing. What I found made my blood run cold. She had been posting about pregnancy symptoms and prenatal vitamins for weeks, going back to right after she posted my announcement. She had shared articles about first trimester nutrition, and had even joined a few pregnancy groups on Facebook. But here's the really crazy part. She had been posting these things before she could have possibly known she was pregnant, if she had gotten pregnant around the time she told the cousins. That's when it hit me. Sarah hadn't posted my pregnancy announcement because she was excited about becoming an aunt, and she hadn't done it because she was feeling left out of pregnancy excitement. She had posted it because she wanted to test the waters for her own announcement. She wanted to see how the family would react, what kind of comments and engagement a pregnancy post would get, and how much attention and excitement it would generate. She had used my pregnancy announcement as a practice run for her own. I felt physically ill when I realized what had probably happened. Sarah had likely been planning to announce her own pregnancy right after mine, but she wanted to make sure her announcement would get the maximum amount of attention and excitement. By posting mine first, she could see exactly how the family responded, what kinds of comments people made, and how much buzz it generated. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that she had probably been planning this for weeks, maybe even before she got pregnant. She had been setting up the situation so that when she announced her own pregnancy, it would be this huge, exciting moment that would overshadow mine completely. I started looking back at all of our interactions over the past few months, and suddenly everything made sense. The way she had been asking detailed questions about our fertility journey, the way she had seemed so interested in our plans for announcing the pregnancy, and the way she had reacted when we told her our news. She hadn't been supportive, she had been taking notes. When I shared my theory with my husband, he didn't want to believe it at first. He said it seemed too calculated and manipulative, and that Sarah might be thoughtless sometimes but she wasn't malicious. But the more we talked about it, the more convinced he became that I was right. We decided to wait and see what happened with Sarah's announcement. If she was really 10 weeks along like she had told the cousins, she would probably announce it officially within the next few weeks. And if my theory was right, her announcement would be elaborate and attention-grabbing, designed to generate even more excitement than mine had. Sure enough, the following Saturday, Sarah posted her pregnancy announcement. But this wasn't just a simple post with an ultrasound picture like she had done with mine. This was a full production professional photos of her and her boyfriend holding baby shoes, a detailed post about their journey to conception, and a countdown to their due date. The post got twice as many likes and comments as mine had. Everyone was commenting about how creative and beautiful the announcement was, how excited they were for Sarah and her boyfriend, and how this was going to be such a special time for the family with 2 babies coming. But here's the thing that confirmed everything for me: Sarah's due date, based on what she posted, was only about 6 weeks after mine, which meant she had gotten pregnant just a few weeks after we told her our news. I realized that Sarah had probably started trying to get pregnant immediately after we shared our news with her. She had seen how excited and happy we were, and she had decided that she wanted that same experience for herself. But she didn't just want to be pregnant. She wanted to have the better pregnancy announcement, the more exciting reveal, and the bigger celebration. She had turned my pregnancy into a competition that I didn't even know I was part of. The worst part was that it had worked. Her announcement was getting all the attention and excitement that mine should have received. People were commenting about how this was such perfect timing, how wonderful it would be for the babies to grow up together, and how lucky the family was to have 2 pregnancies at the same time. But nobody seemed to remember or care that she had stolen my moment in the first place. The narrative had shifted from Sarah doing something wrong to this being a happy coincidence that would bring the family closer together. I felt like I was losing my mind. Here I was, dealing with the emotional aftermath of having my pregnancy announcement stolen, and now I was supposed to be excited about sharing my pregnancy experience with the person who had betrayed my trust in the first place. My husband was finally starting to see the full picture of what had happened, and he was as angry as I was. But we both felt trapped because we couldn't prove that Sarah had done any of this intentionally. And even if we could, it would just make us look petty and jealous. The family was already starting to make comments about how wonderful it would be for the cousins to be so close in age, and how Sarah and I could support each other through our pregnancies. My mother-in-law was talking about planning a joint baby shower, and everyone was acting like this was some kind of blessing instead of the calculated manipulation that I knew it was. I was 16 weeks pregnant and should have been focusing on preparing for my baby, but instead I was dealing with the realization that my sister-in-law had essentially stolen my entire pregnancy experience and turned it into her own opportunity for attention and excitement. Final update. I'm writing this final update at 32 weeks pregnant, and I never could have imagined how this whole situation would resolve itself. What started as a betrayal over a Facebook post turned into something much deeper and more complicated. But the ending is nothing like what I expected. About a month after my last update, when I was around 20 weeks, I decided I needed to have one more conversation with Sarah. The joint baby shower that my mother-in-law had been planning was getting closer, and I couldn't stand the thought of pretending to be excited about celebrating our pregnancies together when I knew what she had done. I called her and asked if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. I told her I wanted to clear the air before the baby shower so that we could both enjoy the celebration. She seemed surprised but agreed to meet me at a cafe near her house. I went into that conversation with a plan. I was going to tell her that I knew what she had done, that I understood she had used my announcement as a way to plan her own, and that I needed her to acknowledge what had happened so we could move forward. I wasn't looking for a huge apology or dramatic confrontation. I just wanted honesty. But when I sat down across from her that Tuesday afternoon, something in her expression stopped me from launching into my prepared speech. She looked exhausted and stressed in a way I hadn't seen before, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite cover. Before I could say anything, she started talking. She told me that she had been wanting to talk to me for weeks, but didn't know how to bring it up. Then she said something that completely changed everything. She told me that she had lied about being pregnant. I sat there staring at her, trying to process what she had just said. She explained that she had gotten caught up in the excitement around my pregnancy announcement and had started fantasizing about being pregnant herself. When family members started asking her and her boyfriend when they were going to start trying for kids, she had impulsively said they were already trying. But then the questions kept coming, and people kept asking for updates, and she felt like she had dug herself into a hole she couldn't get out of. So when she missed her period a few weeks later, instead of taking a test, she just started telling people she was pregnant. She had been pretending to be pregnant for almost 2 months. She told me that she had been researching pregnancy symptoms online and mimicking what she thought she should be experiencing. She had been buying prenatal vitamins and pregnancy books, not because she needed them, but because she was afraid someone would notice if she didn't have them. She had even scheduled a fake doctor's appointment and had been planning to find a way to get a fake ultrasound picture. The elaborate pregnancy announcement she had posted wasn't about competing with mine. It was about making her lie seem more real and believable. She thought that if she made a big public announcement, it would be harder for her to back out of the lie later. But the stress of maintaining the deception was eating her alive. She was having panic attacks about being found out, she couldn't sleep, and she was terrified of what would happen when people expected her to start showing, or when someone wanted to come to a doctor's appointment with her. She had been planning to fake a miscarriage in a few weeks and tell everyone that she had lost the baby. She thought that would be easier than admitting she had lied about being pregnant in the first place. I was completely stunned. All of my theories about her using my pregnancy announcement as a practice run, about her getting pregnant on purpose to compete with me, about her trying to steal my thunder, none of it was true. She had posted my announcement because she was spiraling into this elaborate lie, and she thought that sharing in pregnancy excitement would help her feel like she belonged in that world. She was crying as she told me all of this, and I found myself feeling sorry for her instead of angry. Don't get me wrong, what she had done was still wrong, and it had still hurt me deeply. But seeing her break down and admit to this incredibly complicated and self-destructive lie made me realize that she was dealing with much bigger issues than I had understood. She told me that she had been struggling with depression and anxiety for months, that she felt like everyone around her was moving forward in their lives while she was stuck, and that my pregnancy announcement had triggered this feeling that she was being left behind. She said she didn't plan to post my announcement. She had taken the picture impulsively, and then posted it in a moment of desperation to feel included. Then when everyone started asking her about her own plans for kids, she had panicked and started lying. Each lie led to another lie, until she had created this whole elaborate fiction that she couldn't escape from. She begged me not to tell anyone what she had told me. She said she was going to figure out a way to end the lie without hurting anyone, and that she would take full responsibility for everything she had done wrong. She also finally genuinely apologized for posting my announcement and for lying about our confrontation to her mom. I left that coffee meeting feeling completely drained and confused. Part of me was relieved to finally understand what had really happened, but part of me was also overwhelmed by the realization that Sarah was dealing with much more serious issues than I had realized. I decided not to tell my husband right away. I needed time to process everything Sarah had told me and to figure out how I felt about it. On one hand, her explanation made sense and helped me understand her behavior. On the other hand, she had still violated my trust and caused me months of stress and heartache. Over the next few weeks, I watched Sarah struggle with maintaining her lie. She was clearly miserable, and I could see her anxiety getting worse as time went on. She was avoiding family gatherings, making excuses for why she couldn't hang out, and I could tell that the stress was taking a serious toll on her mental health. Finally, about 3 weeks after our coffee meeting, Sarah called me in tears. She said she couldn't handle the lie anymore, and that she was going to tell everyone the truth. She asked if I would be there when she told the family, not to support her exactly, but just so that someone would know the whole story. That weekend, we all gathered at my mother-in-law's house for what was supposed to be a planning meeting for the joint baby shower. Instead, Sarah stood up in front of everyone and confessed that she had been lying about being pregnant. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Sarah explained that she had been struggling with some personal issues and had made some very poor decisions, including posting my pregnancy announcement without permission. She apologized to me and my husband publicly, and she took full responsibility for all of the drama and confusion she had caused. The family's reaction was mixed. Some people were angry, some were confused, and some were mostly concerned about Sarah's mental health. My mother-in-law was devastated, not just about the lie, but about the realization that she had believed Sarah's version of our confrontation and had treated me unfairly. She apologized to me immediately and said she felt terrible about not believing us when we tried to explain what had really happened. She said she should have known that Sarah's story didn't make sense, and that she was sorry for making me feel like I was the problem. In the weeks that followed, Sarah started getting professional help for her anxiety and depression. She deleted her fake pregnancy announcement from Facebook and reached out to people individually to explain what had happened. It was messy and embarrassing for her, but she handled it with more maturity than I had expected. The strangest part of all of this is that Sarah and I actually ended up developing a better relationship than we had ever had before. Not immediately, it took time for me to fully forgive her and trust her again. But seeing her struggle with mental health issues and watching her take responsibility for her mistakes made me realize that she wasn't the manipulative person I had thought she was. She was just someone who had made some very poor decisions while dealing with problems that were bigger than she could handle alone. My husband was amazing throughout all of this. He supported me when I was angry and hurt, he listened when I needed to process everything, and he helped me work through my feelings about Sarah's situation. He also supported his sister when she was getting help, without ever making me feel like he was choosing sides. As for my pregnancy, I'm now just a few weeks away from my due date, and I'm finally able to feel purely excited about meeting my baby. The stress and drama from the early months feels like it happened to someone else. I never did get to have the pregnancy announcement I had dreamed of, but I've learned that the announcement is just one moment, and it doesn't define the entire experience of being pregnant. The baby shower that was supposed to be joint ended up being just for me, and it was beautiful. Sarah helped plan it, which felt like a meaningful way for her to show that she was genuinely sorry and that she wanted to support me. She gave a speech at the shower where she talked about how excited she was to be an aunt, and it felt sincere in a way that her original Facebook post never had. Looking back on everything that happened, I think the biggest lesson I learned is that people's actions often have much more complicated motivations than they appear on the surface. Sarah's betrayal felt intentional and malicious, but it was really the result of her own struggles and poor coping mechanisms. That doesn't excuse what she did, but understanding it helped me let go of the anger I was carrying. I also learned that family relationships are messy and complicated, and that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are hurting the most themselves. Sarah and I will probably never be best friends, but we found a way to coexist and even support each other that feels healthy and genuine. As I write this, I'm getting ready to welcome my first child into a family that has been through some drama, but has come out stronger on the other side. My baby will have an aunt who has learned some hard lessons about honesty and responsibility, and who will hopefully be a positive presence in their life. The Facebook post that started all of this has been deleted for months now, and most people have probably forgotten about the whole situation. But I'll never forget how it felt to have my special moment stolen, and I'll also never forget how it felt to learn that forgiveness and understanding can sometimes lead to relationships that are deeper and more meaningful than they were before. My pregnancy announcement didn't go the way I planned, but my pregnancy journey taught me things about family, forgiveness, and resilience that I never could have learned any other way. And in a few weeks, none of the drama will matter because I'll be holding my baby, and that's the only announcement that really counts.